Hello, students. Welcome back. Hope all are doing well and gone through the chapter number 6 and 8 of the paper one, that is theories and research methodologies. As I said, finally, from here onwards, we will be starting a new lecture series on our optional subject, that is anthropology. Before proceeding further, I just wanted to explain a few things for at least 2 to 3 minutes. That is our approach. What must be our approach towards chapter 6 of paper 1, that is theories. So, students, firstly, we will develop basic understanding. We'll develop a basic understanding. We'll develop a basic understanding of theory. Each theory. So, students, the subject is designed in such a way that we can discuss each theory for 10 or 15 hours too. Okay. This is what happens in the regular courses. The chapter 6, theories itself, they will discuss for almost 20 to 25 days, sometimes 1 month too. So that is not required. If we do so, completing the optional subject itself will take the 5 to 6 months, and that's not worth it from examination point of view. So whatever that is important from the examination point of view, we will try to discuss that. So we will try to develop the basic understanding of those aspects. With that basic understanding, we will drag our explanation. So that will be enough from examination point of view. So firstly, we will develop the basic understanding of the theory, and secondly, we'll make a note on contributions of each thinkers. We'll make a note on contributions. We'll make a note on contributions of thinkers to the theory, in particular, and discipline, that is anthropology in general. Okay. So secondly, we are going to make a note, 15 or 20 marker note on the contributions of thinkers to the theory in particular or discipline in generals. And one more important thing, students. See, wherever we study any theory, we need to analyze few things. We need to analyze few things. So what is that? It is not equally important from examination point of view. That is, so we need to make a note. A note on what? If to make a note, or we need to find out a difference in approaches. Approaches. Difference in approaches of what? Thinkers who worked within the same theory. For example, whenever we are studying the classical evolutionism theory, we'll study Tyler, Morgan, and Fraser. Right? For time's sake, we don't discuss Morgan under classical evolutionism theory. Why? Because this guy's contribution is more towards the social institution, that is religion. So, when we are discussing the chapter religion under sociocultural anthropology of the paper 1, we will discuss this guy, James Fraser. So, this is what the point I just wanted to make. The moment we complete classical evolutionism theory, we will study the contributions of the Taylor and the Morgan. Once we are done with that, we need to find out difference, or we need to make a note on the difference on approaches of Taylor and Morgan towards the classical evolutionism theory, and this approach must be followed for every theory. Okay. Hmm? when approach of a two thinkers goes on the similar line, in that case we need to find out somewhat similar lines. We need to find out the difference in their approaches towards the theory. And second one, it is equally important to make a note on difference of those theories, difference of those theories, which go somewhat similar in their approaches. Let me put it this way. For example, the moment we complete the classical evolutionism, we will come to the neo-evolutionism. We will discuss the neo-evolutionism. See, both these theories, classical evolutionism and neo-evolutionism, is on the approach of evolutionism under the evolutionism school. Okay, but they follow the different approaches within the evolutionism. That's why they are called classical evolutionists and neo-evolutionists. For this, we will try to find out the difference between classical evolutionism and neo-evolutionism, or difference in the approaches of the classical and neo-evolutionists. So finally, so what must be our approach? The first one, we must develop a basic understanding of the theory. With that basic understanding, we must track our explanation from examination point of view. Okay. Second, we need to make 15 or 20 marker note on the contributions of the thinker to the theory in particular and discipline in general. And finally, it is equally important from our side to analyze two things. The first one is we need to make a note or find out a difference in approaches of a thinkers who worked for a same theory. And second one, at the same time, we need to make a note on the difference of those theories which run somewhat on a similar approaches or similar lines. Okay, that I explained you through the examples, two examples. I hope the approach that we are going to follow for the chapter 6 is clear for you. Okay, with this we will start our first session on the classical evolutionism theory, and before proceeding we'll try to see what must be our learning objectives. Yeah, so what will be our learning objectives of this session, learning objectives of our first session. So students, the first thing, so we will study the theory, the first theory, that is classical evolutionism theory. Secondly, we will make a note on contributions of Taylor, A.V. Taylor and L.H. Morgan, American anthropologist and British anthropologist. And third one, we'll try to find out the difference in approaches of these two thinkers towards classical evolutionism theory. Okay, so once that is done, finally we'll make a 10 marker note on comparative method which took genesis in classical evolutionism. Okay, so that's the thing. So with this, yeah, we'll start our first session. Yes. Before proceeding to further, we need to understand a few things, students. The first one is evolution, and second one is evolutionism, and third one evolutionists, and fourth one cultural evolution. So we need to understand these four things before proceeding into our first theory, that is classical evolutionism. Okay, so first we will try to understand what evolution is. So students, evolution, it is a process in which different forms are produced or developed orderly in a system. See, if we are calling this as evolution, say stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. If systems is developed in such a way from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, so we can say evolution, it's a process. Evolution is a process in which different forms are produced. Different forms are produced or developed in a orderly in a system. and it is concerned with the continuous progress in a system. It is concerned with the continuous progress within the system. Continuous progress. This is all we can see. A continuous progress in a system that brings complexity from simplicity, heterogeneity from homogeneity, and certainty from uncertainty. So we can say the evolution is always from simple to the complex, homogeneous to heterogeneous, and from uncertain to the certain. So in other words, what we can say, evolution reveals change in a system. Evolution reveals change in a system in a course of time, right? In a course of time, the evolution reveals a change in a system, and that can be seen in a stages. That can be seen in a different stages, stage after the stage, in a continuous sequence, from past to present, from past to the present. So we can put it in this way: evolution reveals change within system. Change in a system reveals the change in a system in the course of time, can be shown in a stage of the stage, can be shown in a stage of the stage, in a continuous sequence from past to present. See students, this evolution never deals with the change of a system as revolution attempts to do. What happens in case of the revolution? It straight away deals with a changed system. This is what not evolution does. Okay, evolution always, try to discuss change within the system, not the change of a system. Okay, so and the direction of the evolution. If you see the direction of the evolution, it will be always from simple to the complex, from dissimilarity. You can see the process of evolution, or the direction of the evolution, is always from simple simple to complex, simple to the complex, from similarity to dissimilarity, and from indefinite to definite. Thus evolution can be shown by establishing stages of development in which simple things developed into the complex one. Simple things developed into the complex one. So evolution is. That's the evolution is. So what is this evolutionist? Those who propounded their theories based on evolutionism. They are evolutionists. So when students, this evolutionists, whatever the theory that we are going to discuss further, the first theory, they are all evolutionists. These evolutionists used this evolution, used this process, evolution, use this evolution as a methodology, as a methodology, use this evolution as a methodology for what? To reconstruct the history of mankind, to reconstruct the history of the mankind, that is from past to present, so this evolutionists use this evolution as a methodology to reconstruct the history of the mankind, that is from past to the present. So thus we can say evolutionism. What we can say? Evolutionism. So what's evolutionism? Evolutionism is a methodology. Evolutionism is a methodology or approach. It's a methodology or the approach. Okay, that's a methodology or approach which compares, which always compares the present to the past and establishes the sequence of development. Say stage one, stage two, or stage three. So evolutionism always uses evolution as a methodology. Evolutionism uses evolution as a methodology which compares present, I mean present with the past and establishes the sequence of development from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3. That's the evolutionism is. And the students, the principle of evolution, the principle of evolution, whatever the evolution that we have discussed, this principle of evolution is applicable for both biological and cultural spheres. Cultural spheres, right? See, when we are dealing with biological evolution of any organism, soon after the formation of the earth, because of some ideal climatic conditions and biogeochemical reactions, formation of the cell with that group of cell together, tissues, group of tissues together, organs, organelles, and next organisms. This is how what the biology of any organism, I mean, developed, right? Biological evolution. Even if we consider the cultural sphere, say suppose take an example of the marriage. So what on the basis of a subject that we can say primitive promiscuity. During the orientation session, I told what primitive promiscuity is. It's a concept of indiscriminative sex, which was among the primitive man's, very much prevalent in primitive man's society, right? Primitive man's society. With that, polygamy evolved, and later monogamy. You take any cultural sphere or culture of mankind as a whole. You know what, how it is evolved from savagery to barbarism to evolution, I mean civilization, right? So the concept of evolution or the principle of evolution is directly applicable for biological or cultural spheres. So we can apply this principle to both biological as well as cultural spheres. So with this, we understood the concept of evolution, evolutionists, and what evolutionism is. And now we will try to understand what cultural evolution is. What cultural evolution is. So, as of now, we understood what evolutionism is. Now we will try to understand what cultural evolution is, and after that, we will proceed with the evolutionary school. Okay, yeah, cultural evolution. What cultural evolution is? Say, suppose consider any socio-cultural institution or culture of a mankind as a whole. Just now I said, like primitive promiscuity, I mean the institution of marriage, that is from polygamy, monogamy. This is how the institution of marriage evolved, right? Institution or mankind as a whole. Surgery, barbarism, finally civilization. 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 So, cultural evolution. So, what cultural evolution says? So, cultural evolution says cultural evolution is a process. Cultural evolution is a process in which different successive forms of socio-cultural institution or culture of mankind as whole, culture of mankind as a whole, developed and accumulated, developed and accumulated, developed and accumulated to constitute the growth of culture, to constitute the growth of culture over different period of time, over different period of time, but in a continuity, but in a continuity, and that's the cultural evolution is, right? So with this, I hope, I mean, the very basic or definition of the cultural evolution is clear for you. So, what's cultural evolution is? It's a process by which different successive forms in socio-cultural institutions or culture of a mankind as a whole developed, developed and accumulated, top stage, okay, accumulated to constitute the growth of culture, to constitute the growth of culture over different period of time, but in a continuity, but in a continuity. So that's the cultural evolution is. See, the cultural evolution, yeah. So that's the cultural evolution is. So finally, cultural evolution may be cultural evolution may be defined as another. We can define, or we can say it's a quest. We can say it's a quest for what? Cultural similarities or cultural parallels. So meaning, see students, I just now explained what cultural evolution is. Again, this cultural evolution has some basic postulates. The first thing is genuine cultural parallels or cultural similarities developed independently in all the cultures in a historical sequences. Say for examples, this is the society number one. That is surgery. Say this is the society number one. Like stage one, stage two, and stage three. So this is society two. I mean society two, stage one, stage two, and stage three. This is how society two evolved. Different societies. This is society A and this is society B. Consider. So what this cultural evolutions is genuine cultural parallels or cultural similarities. Similarities. What we can say. See the concept of marriage or family, kinship, language, crafts, arts. See, these are all common in every culture, right? So we can say this as a cultural parallels or cultural similarities. So what this cultural evolution says is cultural parallels among different cultures. Okay, cultural parallels or cultural similarities developed independently in a culture in historical sequence. Throughout the history, these cultural parallels developed in uh, different cultures. Different cultures. It assumes that the very same theory assumes that parallels or similarities, that marriage, family, kinship, anything, language, crafts, arts, in both these societies. These cultural parallels or cultural similars are developed independently due to the psychic unity of mankind. That cultural evolution says man anywhere things are like in a similar environmental condition. That's why there is an similarity in the culture. That's why there is a similarity in a culture, and it develops independently in all culture in historical sequence. This is what the cultural evolution says. Don't worry about this psychic unity and all. That will explain. I will explain you in detail. Okay, I'll explain you in detail. So this is the thing. Uh, so yeah, psychic unity. So finally, what the cultural evolution is: genuine cultural parallels or cultural similarities. The cultural parallels or cultural similarities in both the cultures, okay, are developed independently in all the cultures. So wherever you go in any culture, uh, these particular aspects will develop independently in a historical sequence. And why there is a similarity? Because of the fact of psychic unity. This is what the cultural evolution says. Okay, and uh, thus the cultural evolution as a methodology is vividly a scientific and generalizing rather than historical and particularizing. So meaning, when we are using cultural evolution as a methodology to explain the evolution of a culture, it is just generalizing rather than historical and particularizing. Let me put it in this sense. See, whenever we deal with the evolution always says how the culture evolved throughout the time, but why it evolved, how it originated, um, reason for the genesis, or invention of the culture. It don't deal with that. Okay, it don't deal with that. That's why the cultural evolution as a methodology is vividly scientific and generalizing rather than historical and particularizing. Okay, so finally what we can say, cultural evolution may be defined as a quest. It is defined as a quest for cultural similarities or cultural parallels or cultural regularities. So this cultural evolution, whatever the cultural evolution that we discussed, or just it's a quest for cultural similarities, cultural similarities, or cultural similarities, or the cultural parallels, or cultural regularities. Just try to find with cultural evolution as a methodology. Just try to find why there is a similarity, but why origin, how, they haven't discussed it. This aspect don't discuss that. Won't discuss that. Okay. So this is the thing. Even within the cultural evolution, we have three types. The first one, unilinear evolution. Second one is universal evolution. And third one is multilinear evolution. And third one is multilinear evolution. So among this is the first one we are going to discuss. So unilinear evolution, that's the approach of whom? 19th century classical evolutionists. Okay, when we are dealing with the neo-evolutionism theory, by that time we will explain what universal evolution and multilinear evolution is. Okay, as of now, don't bother about unilinear evolution or psychic unity. Why? Because we haven't get into that explanation. Okay, So this is the thing. Hope the concept of evolution, evolutionism, and cultural evolution is clear for you. I mean, what this quest for, okay, is clear for you. Why? Because based on that, we try to understand the first theory. So these are the basics. With this, we'll start our first theory, that is classical evolutionism. Okay. Yeah. So students, as of now, I mean, in the beginning of the discussion, I said what is this evolutionism. Okay, evolutionism is evolutionism is a method. Evolutionism, or we can say evolutionism, is a theory which uses evolution as a methodology to reconstruct the history of the mankind. Right. So, evolutionary school, the school of theoreticians who what deals or will try to what explain the culture through evolution, or who used evolution as a methodology to explain the culture change as an evolutionary school. Okay, this evolutionary school has two broad streams. Two broad streams. So the two broad thoughts or the streams, a stream of thought can be identified within the evolutionary school. So what are those? One is classical evolutionism, and second one is neo-evolutionism. Neo-evolutionism, classical evolutionism, and neo-evolutionism. Okay. Based on the nationality, again, based on the nationality, again, yeah. So based on the nationality, classical evolution school is further classified into British, German, and American. And even neo-evolutionism, based on the nationality, is classified into British and American. Say from our examination point of view, or whatever that is mentioned in our syllabus, okay, for us, E.B. Taylor and James Fraser from the British school and L.H. Morgan from American school are important for us. While coming to the neo-evolutionism, under the British school, we will study Gordon Child's concept, and under the American school of neo-evolutionism, we will study Leslie White and Julian Stewart concept of neo-evolutionism. Okay. So now we'll start uh, with the discussion of our first theory. Okay, that is classical evolutionism. Classical evolutionism. One minute. Let me have some water. Yes, students. Yeah. So classical evolutionism. So what is this classical evolutionism? The classical evolutionism, that's an earliest approach. Earliest approach by whom? By 19th century. 19th century anthropologists. It's an approach by 19th century anthropologists. Who are those? Taylor, Fraser, Morgan, even some are there. Okay. 19th century anthropologist to the building of anthropological theories. To the building of anthropological theories. So what we can say? Classical evolutionism. Classical evolutionism uh, represents the earliest approach by the 19th century anthropologists to the building of the anthropological theories. So, this classical evolutionism says or it states that culture generally develops in a uniform and progressive manner, and most of the societies pass through the same or similar stages to arrive at the common end. To arrive at the common end. So, the classical evolutionism theory states that culture generally develops in a uniform and progressive manner, and most of the societies pass through the same or similar stages to arrive at the common end. So they have established a definite sequence, that is savagery, barbarism, and next civilization. Savagery, barbarism, and civilization. And the theory states that culture generally develops in a uniform. Culture develop in a uniform and progressive manner, and most of the societies, almost all the societies, pass through the same definite sequence or same similar stages to arrive at the common end. To arrive at the common, to arrive at the common end. And whatever the change that was thought to originate principally within the culture. So whatever the changes in stage by stage, okay, was we are seeing it was thought to be originate principally within the culture. So the development of the culture, what we can say, development, okay, development of a culture was thought to be internally determined. According to this school, the development of the culture is thought to be internally determined. Internally determined. We can, what, explain you like this. uh, we can understand in this way. See, students, whatever the dressing pattern that we are following right now, even it's a culture, right? Because of Western contact, and that's already their culture, and it diffused, invented or followed somewhere and diffused into our culture, and we are following that, and that has become the part of our culture. I mean, from external source, right? And this is usually what the diffusion theory says. Okay, culture originate somewhere else through some vehicles. It will diffuse and become a part of some other cultures. In case of evolution, what they will say, whatever the development that happens within the culture, whatever the developments that happens within the culture, that is internally determined. It's not because of any external forces. Okay, so that's the thing, right? So what we can say, classical evolutionism. Okay, classical evolutionism is a representation of the earliest approach by 19th century anthropologists to the building of anthropological theories, and it states that culture generally develops in a uniform and progressive manner, and most of the societies goes or pass through the same or similar stages to arrive at this common end, and the change that thought to originate principally from within the culture. So the development of the cultures was thought to be internally determined. Okay, whatever the changes that we will see at the end during the gradual development, uh, change is principally, what, internally determined. Okay, originate within the culture, or it is internally determined. That's the classical definition of classical evolutionism. Okay. So it's just the students. So far, we have discussed the basic introduction of the classical evolutionism, right? So with that, we will proceed further and we will see uh, the in-depth discussion or the further discussion of the classical evolutionism theory. So in the very beginning of our discussion and very beginning of this session, we discussed a few things, among them the concept of cultural evolution or the definition of the cultural evolutionism, right? So while defining the cultural evolution, I said there are three typologies. Three typologies among cultural evolution. The first one is unilinear evolution, and second one is universal evolution, and third one is multilinear evolution. So among these three typologies, this universal and multilinear evolution, we will look into it once we discuss neo-evolutionism. So for the time being, unilinear evolution is important for us. So what is this unilinear evolution? So this is the cultural evolution typology that was adopted by classical evolutionists to explain their theory. So we can say classical evolutionism or unilinear evolution. Classical evolutionism or unilinear evolution says human culture as a whole or the socio-cultural institutions therein evolve in a unilinear sequence through definite stages, which are similar like savagery, barbarism, and next civilization. So classical evolutionism or unilinear evolution says socio-cultural institutions or mankind as a whole evolve in a definite sequence. Evolve in a definite sequence that is from savagery to barbarism and then to the civilization. And the direction is unilinear, single direction. Any society for that matter evolve in a single direction, that is unilinear direction, that is from savagery to barbarism and then civilization. So this is the proposition. This is the proposition of the theory. Right? This is the proposition of the classical evolutionists or the classical evolutionism theory. The theory says that sociocultural institution or mankind as a whole evolve in a definite sequence. That definite sequence is unilinear sequence. That is from savagery to the barbarism and then to the civilization. Then to the civilization. Students, mere launching the theory is not enough, right? So they must substantiate it. So, if they want makes us to believe this theory, they must substantiate few things. I mean, at least two things. So, what is that? They must show that they must show that every society followed or followed or gone through all or same stages. So, this thing must be confirmed first. And second one is why all societies follow same pattern. While all societies will follow the same pattern, right? If these two things are, explained, then we can believe that yes, socio-cultural institutions or mankind as a whole definitely evolve in the sequence.
Union sequence from Sawadhi to the barbarism and from barbarism to the civilization, right? To explain this, to make us believe this theory, they used historical method, comparative method, historical and comparative method to compare these two things. For that, doctrine of survival, the concept of doctrine of survival given by the E.V. Taylor, and the idea psychic unity of mankind was drawn. Was drawn. Okay, so first we'll see one by one. So what is this survival? What is this concept of the survival? So students, the concept of this survival was given by E.B. Taylor to explain the symbolic meaning of certain customs. So which obviously lost their significance in the present state, but had a significant meaning in the past. Significant meaning in the past. And the survival, with by seeing the survival, we can say these are the traces of the earlier customs that survive in the present day culture. That survive in the present day culture. Let me put it this way. We'll take an example. See, in the present modern state, let's take an example of the Hindu society. I'll tell you one example. Everybody might have noticed one thing, especially in a Hindu families, they have an custom of applying turmeric, to the main door frame at bottom portion of the main door frame, right? In Telugu, what we can say Gadapa, or in Kannada we'll say Hosudu. So for that, they have a habit of applying turmeric, right? It is of no significance in the modern state, but still the practice is in continue. So such practices we can say survival. If we come across any practices of such kind, then we can say survival. Okay, then we can say survival. What we can confirm from the survival? What we can confirm from the survival? From the survival, we can confirm the early stage of the society. Survival, that's a custom, right? From that custom, we don't know why it is followed. We know that it is of no significance as of now, but still we continues to follow, and that confirms the earliest stage of society. From this, we can confirm that we have come from certain stage of a certain stage of a custom, also from certain stage of a culture, right? And that's the doctrine of survival. Doctrine of the survival. So with that, by using this concept of doctrine of survival, they said or they confirmed that mankind has passed to definite sequence, or every society has some history. Right now we are in present. So by using these concepts, we'll trace the history of the culture through historical method that helps in analyzing cultural varieties, that helps in confirming cultural varieties. And this method is adopted to study and justify the fact that human cultures has undergone progressive change. Has undergone progressive change. And next thing, so this one is proved. Why every society? So we need to. Theory must confirm whether every societies must have followed or gone through the all the stages, right? Not only what doctrine of survivals. I said doctrine of survivals will add utility to the historical comparisons. See, when we are constructing what history of the mankind, say suppose take an example of the archaeology. What happens in case of the archaeology? We will just collect the artifacts, right? And we will go through the dating methods, and we will try to confirm why that was in the practice, and we will match those practice or try to compare those practices with the present with the present state of the practices. With that, we can confirm the one thing, right, that we have some certain history that was of either savagery stage or barbaric stage, based on the technology based on the technology of that particular culture. Okay, based on the technology of the particular culture, and that confirms that mankind or every society has followed, has gone through all the stages, that is the savagery stage and barbaric stage, and finally they arrived at the civilization stage. For this, the doctrine of survival or the concept of survival has added the utility. Okay, next, why all the societies follow the same pattern? Even we need to confirm this. The theoreticians need to confirm this. For this, they have given the idea by name psychic unity of the mankind. Psychic unity of the mankind. Uh, so, what they say? They say that psychic unity of the mankind is a belief that human mind everywhere essentially similar. So, it refers to the commonality of human mind that allows similar or common reactions to the like environments or likely situations. So the idea says man anywhere, think alike. When he will think alike? When the environment is similar. Under the similar environmental conditions, man think alike, and that is the reason we have cultural parallels. That is the reason why we have cultural parallels or cultural similarities among the different cultures. Say suppose this is the society one and this is the society two. It is savagery to barbarism to the civilization. These classical evolutionists. Classical evolutionists has gone through the information that they are having, and they found out, especially the institutions, right? The marriage, family, kinship, and even some cultural traits like arts and artifacts. So these are common among every culture. Common among every culture. So with this, they developed this idea, psychic unity of the mankind. Why? Because so there will be a cultural similar. So cultures are usually parallel among the different societies because man anywhere thinks alike, and that is the reason he evolved through this definite sequence. He evolved through this definite sequence. So with that ideas, with the two ideas and the methods, and to confirm the psychic unity, whether what man everywhere thinks alike or not, they to compare the different societies, they compare the different societies and find out the cultural similars or cultural similars and cultural parallels, and they finally confirm the psychic unity that man everywhere think alike. That is the reason why the similarity in the culture, similarity in the culture, and finally, that's the comparative method. So, with this, the combination of the historical and the comparative method, plus added utility of the doctrine of survival and psychic unity of the mankind, so we can say, or no, we can say theorists have said, the theorians have said, mankind or socio-cultural institutions as a whole evolved in a definite sequence that is from savagery to the barbarism and to the civilization. And that's the unilinear evolution, that is psychic unity of the mankind and concept of survival. And we'll discuss a few more things today. Okay, two to three more points. Yeah. What's it? For classical evolutionists, they aimed at indicating instead that mankind is unity and not the diversity. For them, primitive societies were the ancestors of the modern civilized one. They said it right. Societies evolved from savagery, barbaric stage, and next to the civilized stage. So for them, mankind is an unity and not the diversity. To man at this stage, savagery stage, is an ancestor of a man in this stage, civilized stage. That's when there is man in the modern stage. So the classical evolutionism aimed at indicating standard mankind was unity and not the diversity. So for them, the primitive societies were primitive societies. That is, savage societies were the ancestors of the more modern and civilized societies. This is the thing. And second one, they said that culture is always progressive. For them, the culture is always progressive. So cultural evolution is always progressive, hence it is from simple stage of homogeneity to complex state of heterogeneity. Culture is always progressive, meaning whatever the changes that we are seeing in the successive stages of the culture is not because of degeneration. It's not because of the degeneration or deterioration within the culture. It is because of the development. So they are trying to indicate that culture is developing in each stage. So that's why they said cultural evolution is always progressive. The cultural evolution is always progressive. And one more thing, students, and one last point. Sometimes there will be a diversities in a human culture, right? So these diversities arise because of the difference in the environment. What we said in the psychic unity, a man everywhere think alike in similar environmental conditions, right? In similar environmental conditions, when environment conditions are not similar, obviously there must be some difference in the culture, right? See, compare society 1 and society 2. Dress or the clothes that humans wear present in every society, right? But pattern differs based on the climatic or environmental conditions, or based on the culture pattern that society follows. So, environment is unsimilar. If when environment within the culture, or among the different cultures, are not similar, then diversities may appear. And we can say one more thing, even because of some external forces, the diversities may appear, right? So the diversities in the culture arises because of the difference in the environment and institutions. And one more thing that is due to some external forces, might be from external forces because of the diffusion. Okay. So the diversities, according to the school, are of secondary significance in the analysis of the evolution of the culture. So meaning, present in the very beginning itself. Whatever the change that takes place within the culture, the change is internally determined, right? Internally determined. External forces is of secondary significance, or they are, what, completely overlook this significance. So, what's the point that we can make? That diversity in the human cultures arise because of the difference in the environment and situation. And these diversities, according to this culture, are only of secondary significance in the analysis of evolution. So, with that, they are confirming they are strictly sticking on to the psychic unity, the idea of the psychic unity. That's it. Man always, what, think alike, and that's why cultural similarity and follow the same pattern. So there is no scope for the diversity in the classical evolutions. So the students, we understood what unilinear evolution is, and next psychic unity of the mankind, concept of survival, and next very basic of the historical method and why historical method is used, and comparative method. Just for this theory sake, uh, we need to have idea, just a basic idea of what this historical and comparative method is, and why it is used, and what it confirms when it is used. Okay, with the added utility of doctrine of survival and psychic unity of the mankind. In the further session, obviously we will discuss this method in depth and we will make note of it. Okay, no need to worry about it. So with that, the explanation of classical evolutionism theory is clear for you, right? So with this, we have seen the features or the postulates of the classical evolutionism theory and the methodology, right? And the methodology that they have followed. This is the methodology that they have followed to, construct the evolutions. And what is the research methodology that they have followed? Secondary sources. Whenever you are constructing the theory, there must be some research data. So from where they have sourced this data? Secondary sources. That was the colonial era when this theory thinkers have launched that theory. There were so many people who were, traveling around the world. Even the missionaries, they collected the information from the missionaries and the travelers. So obviously that will be the secondary data from the secondary sources, right? Using that data, they try to compare that data with their societies, the Victorian societies or England, and launch this theory. That is classical evolutionism theory. That's about the classical evolutionism theory. And now we will see the accomplishments or the positive outcome of this classical evolutionism theory and the criticisms. Now we will see.
Yes, students. And now we will see what are the criticisms of the classical evolutionism. That is, criticisms of classical evolution. We'll go one by one. Okay. The first one is classical evolutionism theory or classical evolutionists were criticized for adopting, weak methodology. Weak methodology. For adopting the weak methodology, the weak research methodology. What is that weak research methodology? that is reliance on or relying on secondary sources of information. So they hardly visited the field. I mean, no field work, no field work. They simply, launched the grand theories based on the secondary source of the information they have gathered, for which they are criticized as armchair anthropologists. Armchair anthropologists. Clear? So the classical evolutionists being criticized as armchair anthropologists because of their weak research methodology, that is, reliance on secondary sources of information. Secondary sources of information. And second, there is one more criticism, students, that evolution theory, whatever the classical evolutionism theory that we have studied, this is one-sided or partial analysis. One-sided or partial analysis because of its continuous preoccupation to show independent evolution of culture through progressive sequential stages. So the theory is independent evolution. So the culture developed independently, right? Independently in every society. Why it developed independently? Why? Because of psychic unity of mankind, right? So man everywhere, things alike. That's why in similar environmental condition, the similar culture pattern will gets developed, and there will be no connection, no historical connection, even without the historical connection, and they will develop the similar patterns of the culture because of the psychic unity of the mankind, and that's the independent evolution. That's the independent evolution without help of one or without interference of the one. Independent evolution and in a progressive sequential manner. Progressive sequential manner. We said, what is that progressive? Uh, so whatever the change that we see within the culture is internally determined, and the change is not a product of degeneration or deterioration. Rather, they said it's a progress within the culture, right? So, uh, so students, the evolutionary theory is one-sided or partial analysis because of its continuous preoccupation to show independent evolution of the culture through progressive sequential stages, right? There is a chance that any cultural trait or any culture that has origin at some place, you know, diffuse or spread and will become part of another culture. So during this course, this may change its structure. That culture may change its structure, and that's the degeneration, right? Here, let's say culture is progressive. That means it's not a degeneration; it's a development. Even there is a chances that degeneration may happen, and it's not an evolution; it's an imitation, right? They're following some others' culture. I mean, there is an influence, right? So for this, we can say, what is that? Evolutionary theory is one-sided or partial analysis because of its continuous preoccupation to show independent evolution of culture through progressive sequential stages. It is one-sided because it says independent evolution, culture develops, independently, and it's a progressive. So there is an evidences, or we can easily say, uh, even with the influence the culture can develop in the present, what you are seeing, westernization, modernization, so and so. influence, right? Progressive, sometimes what culture develops, sometimes it degenerates. The product of the culture, whatever we see, it need not to be a development every time. It may be degeneration too or deterioration too. So, right? And for this, they are criticized. Why? Evolution theory is one-sided or partial analysis. Why? Because it always says that there is an independent evolution of the culture through progressive sequential stages. So because of this, Bronislaw Malinowski, criticized classical evolutionism theory as limb of conjectural reconstruction. Limb of conjectural reconstruction. What is this meaning? A limb of conjectural conjectural reconstruction. That is the conclusion. What conclusion? Culture develops independently in a progressive manner in a definite sequence. That's the conclusion developed by the classical evolutionism, right? So the conclusion formed on the basis of incomplete information. Why? Even this is possible, for which Bronislaw Malinowski criticized classical evolutionism as the limb of conjectural reconstruction. Okay, limb of conjectural reconstruction. And one more thing, students. Third one. What's it? And their assumption that entire mankind of the world passed through the different stages in a sequence doesn't hold good for all groups. They said it right. Savagery to barbarism and then to the civilization. They said every society or culture, social-cultural institution for that matter will definitely evolve in this sequence only. This is what they said, right? And we can say this doesn't hold good for all societies. All societies. Why? Because according to the classical evolution, this is how what the culture or the institution must evolve, and it's always progressive, so and evolving. Consider an example, students. Consider an example of Stockholm of Mongolia, and next Dropas, Dropas of Ladakh, Loba, Loba, Loba of Yutang, that is Nepal. So they're all endangered societies. They're not in existence now. Endangered. So according to classical evolutionism theory, so what culture what develops or passes through the definite sequences always progress and keeps evolving. In this case, see, they're already what happened? Done. Endangered. They're not in an existence. So from this, what we can say, the classical evolutionist assumption that the entire mankind of the world passed through the definite stages in a sequence doesn't hold good for all the groups. Some may pass through the stages, some may not pass through the stages, some may skip the stages too. So there is a chances for everything, right? So for this analysis, A.R. Radcliffe Brown, A.R. Radcliffe Brown, A.R. Radcliffe Brown called classical evolution or classical evolutionism as pseudo-historical, pseudo-historical, and conjectural history. Got it? So that's the third criticism.
Students, mere making points, I mean, only points, just like a GS doesn't fetch you any marks. I will always say that. Whenever some students are writing criticisms of the classical evolution, they write, armchair anthropologists. Why? Because weak methodology, ethnocentrism, one-side analysis. They don't substantiate it with, scholarly points. So this is an optional, right? So always, try to bring in that scholarly analysis. That will, really helps you in scoring the good marks. Hmm? So next, finally, fourth one. If you're making any point, just, try to convey who made that, whose analysis is that, which thinker's analysis is that. Okay. So finally, and the last one, Gordon Child. Gordon Child. Gordon Child actually criticized classical evolutionists for neglect human invention and creativity. Human invention and creativity. Why? Because classical evolutionists completely, neglected the human invention and creativity. They said evolve, evolution, evolve. Why it evolved and how it origin, no, they don't explain it. And you know what, majority of the times the culture is a product of invention and justify the human creativity, right? Justify the human creativity. Creativity creativity, it is of secondary significance. It's not properly, explained by them. Okay, it's not considered by the classical evolutionists. So for that, what, Gordon Child criticized them. And apart from that, even the classical evolutionism theory, it's also overlooked diffusion and migration. Diffusion and migration. Culture need not to be, get developed independently always. Sometimes, as I said, it might have, took genesis at one place because of some vehicles or carrying vehicles or the cultural vehicles. It might have spread and followed by different cultures, right? So this aspect was completely, overlooked. What is diffusion and migration by the classical evidence? So that's about the criticisms of classical evolution. And apart from that, they are critics for one more thing, for being so ethnocentric. They have given the sequence, right? Savagery, barbarism, and next civilization. So this classical evolutionists, they always kept their society at the heights and try to draw, comparison, or try to compare their societies with others societies under savagery and barbaric stage, so inferior comparisons. So for this, they call us ethnocentric. Ethnocentric. They always kept their culture at the higher stages and started comparing by placing other cultures in the lower stages. But even coming to the examination, you know what? This one is fine. Weak methodology, armchair anthropologists. Just try to get in scholarly points. Okay. So this is what the issue that we are having in the this one, classical evolutionism, right? Independent evolution and progressiveness of the culture. Even that can be disproved. And next, passing of definite stages. Even that can be disproved. And finally, there is a chances for diffusion and migration, even creativity in the culture. So that the idea of independent evolution, or what, not considering the invention of the creativity, even further they can be criticized, right? So bring in scholarly points. And that's about the criticisms of classical evolutionism. Okay. So that's about the classical evolutionism, students. And finally, draw conclusion. What you can write it in the conclusion. You might have gone through the accomplishment of the theory, right? That you can, construct in the criticism. Despite being, so many criticism, it's the first effort. What's the first effort? It's the first effort with the classical evolutionism theory or classical evolutionists to establish a scientific discipline of anthropology. To establish, that is the first effort to establish scientific discipline of anthropology, and they are the one who found them. They might have criticized by so many what future thinkers for their approach and for their grand theories without having the proper empirical data, but still they are the one who laid foundation for the organized discipline when none existed before. So this you can add in conclusion. Okay, so that's about classical evolutionism theory. And now we will look into the contributions of the thinkers one by one. This we'll look into the contributions of E.B. Taylor to the classical evolutionism theory in particular, and to the discipline anthropology in general. In general, with that, 70% of our first theory will get complete. Okay. Uh, yes, students. Now we look into the contributions of E.B. Taylor. Contributions of E.B. Contributions of E.B. Taylor to the theory of classical evolutionism in particular, and to the discipline of anthropology in general. During our orientation session, I clearly said you one thing. I have given you the structure that must be followed when question being asked on the contributions of any thinker in an examination. Right? So what's that? You need to mention introduction. Once that is done, literary contributions of that thinker, and post that concepts that is given by the thinker. And once that is done, research methodology that he is followed, that he or she followed, and finally critics and counter critics if any, and finally a balanced conclusion. Right. So for E.B. Taylor, it's your duty to form an introduction. So what must be encompassed in an introduction? A brief anthropological journey of E.B. Taylor in 30 words. Sum it up as a good introduction. So we proceed with further discussion. Yes. See, these are the literary contributions of the E.B. Taylor. The first one is Mexico Mexicana. Second one, researches into the early history of the mankind and development of civilization. It is in 1865. And next, primitive culture. And after that, introduction to the study of man and civilization, 1881. And then a method of investigating the development of institution, social institution. It's an essay of E.B. Taylor. Students, even if you can't, remember all the literary contributions of the E.B. Taylor, but from your part, it is very much important to remember at least two literary contributions of the E.B. Taylor, which is very much important. Among them, the first one is Research into the Early History of the Mankind and Development of the Civilization, 1865. Because this is the work in which he has given the idea of psychic unity that we already explained, right? And second one is primitive culture. This book is called Anthropological Classical because of major contributions in the concept of survival, and second one is theory of animism. Theory of animism. Studies regarding the religion originated uh, from the primitive culture work of the E.B. Taylor. For that reason, and I wanted to remind you one more thing. This is the work Primitive Culture 1871, in which Taylor has given the scientific definition of the culture. Scientific definition of the culture. Even in the orientation session, we just discussed the definition of the culture as given by the E.B. Taylor, right? So, culture is a complex whole that encompasses everything which is learned by man as a member of the society. And that definition, that scientific definition for the first time is given in primitive culture. So remember the definition and the work in future I will show applicability. Okay, applicability of this definition and works of the title. Okay, where we are going to use it. That I will show in the future classes. Okay, even though if you can't remember all the literary contribution, at least you must remember these two. The second and third one, that is primitive culture 1871 and researchers into the early history of the mankind. Okay, with that we'll proceed. Contributions to the classical evolutionism. Contributions to the classical evolutionism. What is the contribution to the classical evolutionism? He, especially, when you are constructing the body uh, of contributions of E.B. Taylor to the anthropology and classical evolutionism theory, try to construct on this line. Okay. Okay. When you have taken the center heading as contributions to the classical evolutionism, what he has done to the classical evolutionism, evolutionary reconstruction, and cultural history. How he has done that, that we will explain. See, Mexico Mexicana. This Mexico Mexicana book 1861 is a product of exploration of Leningrad, Leningrad, Leningrad caves by E.B. Taylor. Usually, in every book, we'll see that classical evolutionists hardly visited the field. They haven't done no field work, and they were criticized for that too, right? But in case of E.B. Taylor, he's the first one to do the field work on Leningrad caves. It's an archaeological field excavation site, an excavation site. So he just worked on that excavation site, and excavation site. There is some technical error. Just please students. So the Mexico Mexicana, it's a product of exploration of Leningrad caves. That's an archaeological excavation site by E.V. Taylor. While working on the sites, you know what E.B. Taylor, he compared the material and non-material remains of these sites. There is different rites, customs, belief, myths, and folklore, and he compared these material remains and non-material remains, okay, which was in use at that time, okay, at that time with the present society, that that for that society for to which he's a part is a part. So by comparing, so he came to the conclusion that he came to the conclusion that culture developed from primitive to the civilized stage. That is from savagery, barbarism, and then to the civilization, and then to the civilization. So, so difference in the comparison. I mean, the remains that he was having and the present society with the present society was opposite to each other. Was opposite to each other, right? And another thing is concept of survival. Even in this, he has used the concept of the survival. That what he analyzed the non material things, that is the customs that was present at the time, even though it was not having any significance. From that, he confirmed, though it is not having the significance, it is in continuance. Why? Because it was having some significance in the earlier, and that confirms the earlier stage or the primitive stage of the human society. We just take the support of this concept of survival and the archaeological remains that he analyzed and compared it, and finally, he constructed what? Evolutionary line or cultural history of a. So that's first thing. And second one. So that was done in the which work? Mexico Mexicana. So in the work Mexico Mexicana, he constructed the evolutionary line. He constructed the cultural history of the mankind. And second one, progressive cultural development. Progressive cultural development. Just to further explain the mankind or social institution as a whole follow the union evolution, he just come up with the idea psychic unity of the mankind, right? The psychic unity of the mankind that took genesis in which work? This is this one. Researchers into at the earliest stage of the mankind and development of the society, 1865, with he just come up with that idea, psychic unity of the mankind, where he explained the reasons for the similarity in the culture among the I mean, different societies around different societies around the world, and even with that, he said culture always, what develops in a progressive manner, and whatever the successive products, but we see in an evolution is a product of development within the culture and not because of any deterioration. Okay, so that's the second contribution. And next, third one, scientific study of the culture. In the work, primitive culture. In the work, primitive culture, 1871. So in the work, primitive culture, 1871. I also said this is an anthropological classical. It's an anthropological classical, right? It's an anthropological classical. In this work is very remarkable, especially for the even for the EV Taylor. Why? Because this is the work in which begins the scientific study of the culture in the anthropology, and the work is known for the two major contributions. Two major contributions, that is the doctrine of survivals, and second one is theory of animism. This is the work in which Taylor, first attempted to explain a religion. Okay. So, we'll see one by one. What is the doctrine of survival? Survivals, already we have seen it in the classical evolution, right? So, for your sake, I will try to, revise it one second. Okay, doctrine of survivals. What usually survivals are? Survivals are the process, customs, and opinions that present by force of habit, even when they lost utility in the present state, right? And thus the survival always remain as the proof of earlier condition for us. So using this survivals, you always try to reconstruct the cultural history of the societies. So using survivals in constructing the cultural history of the society, it's called doctrine of survivals. the method of you know what, using these survivals as an added utility in constructing the cultural history is the doctrine of survivals. Okay, this added utility further added to prestige to the comparative method for which comparative method as a key to the ethnological study. While discussing the classical evolutionism, we have seen right the historical method plus comparative method with the added utility of survival helps well in explaining the evolution process. Helps well in explaining the evolution process. So because of this, and it's an key to the ethnological studies. It's a key to the ethnological studies, and because of continuous using of this doctrine of survival, Tyler is referred to as comparative ethnology. So in comparative analysis, and even in especially even in the historical analysis, you always use this added utility in getting the analysis, the comparative analysis, for which the Tyler is regarded as the founder of the comparative ethnology. And the next one is animism, theory of animism. Next one is the theory of animism. Theory of animism. Theory of animism. Or Taylor contributions. Or Taylor on opinion on religion. Students, although Taylor, constructed the possible sequence of many cultural institutions, his most comprehensive treatment was in the field of primitive religion. Primitive religion. Primitive. So what Taylor says on primitive religion. We'll see. So, what his explanation regarding the evolution of religion? Evolution of religion. How what the primitive religion gave a way for the evolved religion. What we are seeing in the present societies. Okay, we try to analyze it. See, for him, so Taylor, he always started his explanation with explanation of religion as belief in supernatural powers. We find religion. Taylor defined religion as a belief in supernatural powers. Supernatural powers. Belief in the supernatural powers. For him, all religious phenomena were taken out of their cultural settings. So whatever the religious phenomena that were generated or what created, it is because of the cultural setting. It's a product of the cultural setting. Okay, for Taylor, religion was mainly attempt to understand the events of human experiences. So he always, he considered early man as savage philosopher. Savage philosopher. I said, for Taylor, religion was mainly an attempt to understand the events of human experiences. Events of human experiences. For religion, according to Taylor,
So the religion, it's an attempt to understand the events of the human experiences. So firstly, he considered, early man as a savage philosopher. Savage philosopher. Why? Why? Because the early man doesn't possess adequate knowledge to reason scientifically, to reason any scientific reason behind anything. So that's why he called him as a savage philosopher. But he must have noticed the difference in living and dead. He must have noticed a difference between living and death. So after the death, the soul leaves the body, right? But sometimes, but sometimes it appears in the dream, acting as if alive. So this belief in a man developed that soul continued to exist even after life. So according to the Taylor, even after the death, sometimes the memories of the person comes in the dream of a man. I mean, early the savagery man. So that made him to believe that soul exists. So soul continued to exist even after the death. With that belief extended to the non-living being objects also, because they also appear in the dreams. Because they also appear in the dreams. So what we can say? First, it is animism. What is animism? That is belief in souls. With that, they developed the concept of animatism too. Animatism. What is the concept of animatism? We will explore everything in detail when we discuss when once we come to the chapter religion. Okay, just try to have a basic understanding. Okay, animism is a belief in souls. Animatism, belief in internal power of the object. Okay, belief in internal power of the object. It's a belief to believe that even materials like your chair, table, desk, or even trees, uh, this non-living beings, to have a soul. That is animatism. And next, naturism. That is worship of the nature forces. Worship of nature forces. Worship of the nature forces. So, as Taylor said, according to the Taylor, after the death, the soul leaves the body but sometimes appears in the dream, acting as if alive. Thus, it made the savagery man uh, to believe that soul, continue to exist even after the death. So that is the basis. With that basis, it also extended to the non-living objects. It's also extended to the non-living objects. Why? Because even they also appear in the dreams. Thus, according to the Taylor, early man's belief that everything possessed life and soul was the early phase of the religion. So, according to the Taylor, this is the early phase of the religion. What is the early phase of the religion? That is animism. Animism is the early stage of the religion. Why? Because early man's belief that everything possessed life and soul. That is the reason. That's the early stage of religion, according to the Taylor. Another belief that soul have a mobility and they protect them. So there was another belief among the savagery men that soul exists even after the death. That's the first thing, and it is having the mobility and it is having the ability to protect them. Okay, ability to protect them. And this man, savagery man tried to communicate with the soul. That led to the development of prayers and active worship. Prayers and active worship. You can correlate with these things. Usually, in certain times, we actually do the ancestral worship, right? Hmm? So this is the Tyler explanation and why the belief in the soul or worship of the souls, started. Okay, that's he says. In course of the time, a man started believing souls have the mobility and they have ability to protect us. So, and you know what, because of that, man, you know what, try to attempt or try to communicate with the souls. And that led to the development of prayers and active worship of the souls, active worship of the souls. And in course of time, that animism give rise to the animatism. Why? Because the belief is extended. Belief that even non-material things possess the soul is extended. That gave rise to the development of the animatism, and next to the naturism, that is worship of the nature forces, and started, you know what, worshipping the nature forces. Finally, different spirit in course of time elevated to the status of god. So finally, this different forces, whatever the different forces that we will be, that the Savage man was seeing, in course of time elevated to the status of gods, and each god controlling the specific aspect of the nature. And finally, that gave rise to the development of polytheism, belief in the different multiple gods. As time passes, all gods were not important, all gods were not important. Hierarchy of the gods emerged. So minor gods thrown back to the background, that gave rise to the monotheism. This is what the explanation given by the Tyler on the religion in primitive in the work primitive culture, in the work primitive culture. That's the Tyler's, you know what, opinion on the evolution of the religion. And one more thing, Tyler on the development of the social institutions. That's the last one we need to discuss it, right? Tyler on the contribution of the Tyler on contributions of the Tyler on what is Tyler opinion on the social institutions. Tyler opinion on the social institution. Yeah. See, students, through his work, the last one that I have mentioned, one, the method of investigating the development of the institution. Through his work, a method of investigating the development of institution that is applied to the laws of marriage and descent, published in the Royal Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland. Especially, you know what, to publish this essay, he prepared the questionnaire. Questionnaire. He prepared the questionnaire and took data from 282 societies. And took data from 282 societies. So based on that data, he analyzed few things. He analyzed few things. What were those? He analyzed post-marital residence pattern, post-marital residence pattern, and custom of in-law avoidance. And with that, he concluded matrilineal locality, an institution called Couvade, Coupab, Couvade, patriarchy, patriarchy locality,
and Kuwait.
So we analyze the postmarital residence pattern and custom of in-law avoidance through that questionnaire, which is having the data from the 282 societies, and he concluded matrilineality and matrilocality preceded patrilineality and patrilocality. So this was the first, and through which the patrilineal and patrilocality evolved. Okay, you know the meaning, right? Matrilineality or patrilineality. If you know what lineage is drawn from the mother side, then it is matrilineality. If the lineage is drawn from the father side, then it is patrilineal. What is matriarchy? So, female is the head of the family, female domination. In case of the patriarchy, male domination. So, male is the head of the, I mean, family, male domination. Matri locality, locality, matri locality. So, residence of a couple after the marriage in female house. That's matri locality. If it is in men's house, then it is patri locality. Okay. Uh, to further, explain it or to confirm it, that patrilineal society, evolved from the matrilineal. He has taken an example of the covet, okay, institution called covet. Example to basically to substantiate this idea. Okay, what is this covet? It's usually, custom of men to imitate the habits of women, especially during the pregnancy and the labor pains. That's the covet. Okay, that's the covet. So according to the Taylor, the institution covet is, usually absent in matrilineal society and patrilineal society, but present in patrilineal. Present in matri and patrilineal society, and that and presence of this, what we say, institution, cultural institution, covet confirms the patrilineality and the patriarchy evolved from the evolved or matrilineality preceded by patrilineality. Okay, so this is the thing. Don't get confused too much, students. Why? Because they just said evolution of everything. They have shown this cultural. The problem with this evolutionists is they shown the evolution. That's it. Majority of the cases, lacks substantiation. And second one, they haven't explained why actually the culture, comes into the picture, or origin of the culture. Okay, no, they just shown evolution. This is how they evolve. The significance, genesis, they haven't shown that. Okay, that's why this theory parts. These are the, most confusing part for the students. Believe the process. Just be patient till we complete theories and research methodologies, and after that, you will get somewhat refined pictures, refined picture. Till then, you need to be very patient. Okay, so that's the tailor on the development of the social institutions. And next, finally, we need to discuss one more thing, that is contribution to the anthropology as a discipline. Contribution to the anthropology as a discipline. So Taylor's contribution to the, classical evolutionism theory that we discussed, right? Construction of cultural history, that's the first thing. Progressive theory, its idea of the psychic unity, and utilization of the doctrine of the survivals. And next, he has given the theory of animism, right? And Tyler's opinion on socio-cultural institutions. So everything we have discussed under these heads, that is evolutionary reconstruction or cultural history, progressive cultural development, scientific study of the culture,
And finally, Taylor on the development of the social institutions. So these heads you need to know what explain. Welcoming to the contributions of the E.B. Taylor. And finally, contributions other than evolution. What are the contributions other than evolution? The first one is scientific definition of the culture. Scientific definition of the culture. So what are the other contributions? This one is scientific contribution of, I mean, scientific definition of the culture. Okay, in which work he has given the a definition, scientific definition of the culture? That is in primitive religion, right? In primitive religion, 1871. Okay. So what Taylor definition says? Culture is that complex. Culture is a complex whole which encompasses everything: art, law, customs, so and so, everything. So culture is everything. The complex whole that encompasses everything that man learns or man acquire as a member of society. As a member of society. So it was the Taylor who first gave the scientific definition of the culture, taking what wide ethnographic sense. So even in that definition, what we need to carefully observe few words actually. Culture as a complex whole includes everything that is knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom. And finally, I mentioned one more thing, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. Acquired. So culture is acquired, right? That means it's a product of social learning, not hereditary. Culture is not hereditary, it's a product of social learning. It's a product of social learning. And difference in the culture is not the result of degeneration but of the progressive in the cultural knowledge. See, it always says whatever the culture we see in the success stage is a product of development, and we shouldn't see it as a degeneration. So it's in progress. So it's always progressive. In the very, earlier stages, he has given the scientific definition of the culture in most possible, wide ethnographic sense. That's the one more contribution of the Taylor to the discipline of anthropology. And second one is statistical method. I said, okay, earlier, when Taylor, especially E.V. Taylor, on social cultural his opinion on social cultural institution, evolution of the social cultural institution through an essay, right? Through an essay. So, what was the name of that essay? Just now, yes, we have mentioned it, right? A method into the investigation of development of institutions. For this work, especially in this work, he has used questionnaire, and just one, yeah, statistical studies in anthropology, where he has used the statistics, whatever what the questionnaire that the data he got from the question is, he analyzed almost 282 societies, right? To form his opinion or to show the evolution of the socio-cultural institutions. So in this work, that is so in this work the method of the method of investigating the development of institution used statistical method. Statistical method, right? Use the statistical method, and that reveals or that shows the importance of statistical studies in the anthropology, and it proves to be very helpful to compare the different societies of the world to arrive at some universal conclusions. And this method was used by GP Murdoch in the later stages. And apart from this, he is the first. He offered the first theory. He is the first one to offer a theory on incest taboo that we will discuss in chapter marriage. Hope you know the meaning of incest taboo, right? Yeah, he is the first one who gave the theory on the incest taboo. So that's the students, the contributions, the major contributions of the E.B. Taylor. And now we will see the major criticism to the contribution of the E.B. Taylor. And major contributions to the major, criticisms to the E.B. Taylor. Criticisms. So, what are the criticisms that was faced by E.B. Taylor? The first one is reliance on secondary data, obviously. Reliance on secondary source of information. Secondary source of information. And the second one, he didn't deal with the religion as a whole. He just considered origin and development of beliefs. That's it. So Taylor has not dealt religion as whole. Okay, students. I said in the beginning, there might be so many confusions among you. Don't bother about it. Once we complete the theories and research methodologies, you will get somewhat refined picture. Okay, the moment we complete entire socio-cultural anthropology of both paper one and paper two, then you will get a clear picture. Okay, uh, and for majority of the students, these are the actually irritating area. These theories and research methodologies. Why? Because that what always leads to so many confusions. So make it very clear. So be clear of one thing while coming to the evolution. They always, shown the line. Just they have shown the line and development. That's it. So they haven't dealt with the origin or reason of the origin of a culture. So those aspects, no, they haven't discussed, especially in their theories. So finally, second one, what is the criticism that is faced by the Taylor? He hasn't dealt religion as a whole. He only considered origin and development of beliefs. And next one is he neglected the social dimensions of the religion. Neglected the social dimensions of the religion. He's the one who said that every religion has its genesis in the cultural setup, but he neglected the social dimensions of the religion when explaining the evolution, for which he is criticized. So these three are the criticisms of the E.B. Taylor. So with this, we have completed the classical evolutionism theory and uh, contributions of E.B. Taylor to the classical evolutionism theory in particular and to the discipline of anthropology in general. So in tomorrow in the next session we will discuss
contributions of L.H. Morgan to the discipline. And next, we'll make a note on the comparative method, and we'll discuss the comparative method. And thirdly, we'll make out the difference between the approaches of Taylor and the Morgan. With that, we can complete our classical evolutionism theory, first theory. So here is an assignment for you based on the topic that we have discussed today. Okay, please note it down. The first one, make a note of 15 marker note on classical evolutionism. That is, explain the basic tenets of the classical evolutionism. Okay. Second one, discuss the contributions of E.B. Taylor to the anthropology in general and classical evolutionism theory in particular. Okay. So these are the assignments. Just listen to the lecture and go through the material ones and frame answer for this, keeping this both as and base. Make a note in the question and answer format and keep it ready. So I haven't given not a ready-made introduction and conclusion, especially for these two things. Okay, so you need to develop it, and I told you what and how must be the introductions and the conclusion. So based on your understanding, I said conclusion must be always positive and balanced. Okay, and so when you listen to the lecture and when you are going through the material, you will get to know. Right? So what must be encompassed in your conclusions based on the right. Okay, let me give you an hints that how you must write answers for this. So especially for the first question, explain the basic tenets of the classical evolutionism. Just in the 30 words, you explain what cultural evolutionism is. That I clearly, explained in this lecture. Just make a note of it and form it as an introduction. And once that is done, straight away take a center heading, the basic tenets or features of the classical evolutionism, where you're supposed to explain the ideas like unilinear evolution, right? The concept of the psychic unity and the concept of the survivals. Methodology, there is historical and comparative method, historical method, and comparative method. Okay. Explain the theory based on these ideas. Once that is done, you need to mention the criticisms. Between that, you need to mention the research methodology that they have used, that is secondary sources, and finally the critics, and finally a balanced and a positive conclusion. I told you accomplish whatever the accomplishments that we have seen, that you can straight away use that in the conclusion, especially for these questions. So whenever a question comes from the classical evolutionism, so content will be ready from your side. You can straight away hit with the answer. So that is the first. And second one is all about discuss the contributions of around discuss the contributions of E.B. Taylor. In introduction, I said just go through the anthropological journey of E.B. Taylor and sum it up in 30 words. That forms the introduction. And once that is done, mention the literary contributions, and after that, take a center heading contributions of E.B. Taylor to the classical evolution, there where we need to explain Taylor in evolutionary history reconstruction. That is, next one is a progressive theory, and third one scientific study of the culture, and fourth one Taylor on social institutions. Okay, and what evolution of the social institutions. You need to explain the concepts under these four heads. Okay, so once that is done, contributions other than evolution, that is scientific definition of the culture, statistical studies, and it's the first one to offer incest taboo. That was actually later developed by Claude Levi-Strauss. Okay, so mention that. By mentioning that, the contributions, you will done with the contributions, and after that, finally mention the critics, critics or criticisms of the E.B. Taylor's approach, and finally conclusion.
Okay. So for this, making the best introductions or conclusions, you can use your material, even any of your top one so and so. Right. So that's for today. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much, students. See, sometimes there will be a delay in uploading the videos. Why? Because I'm completely, sandwiched between this initiative and my professional responsibilities. Okay, but you know what? Things will be completed in meantime. No need to worry about it. Focus on this assignment, and very importantly, be patient till you complete your theories and research methodologies. By that time, you will get some better picture about the discipline. This is the most irritating part. That's why we're straight away, starting with this. Once this is done, everything will become, cakewalk in anthropology. Okay, it's all about, rote learning, mug up the facts, understand the facts, and mug it up. Okay, in few places we need conceptual clarity and I mean explanations. That we will see it. Okay, yeah, students. Bye. See you.